Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of our virtual coffee hours meet up with Mallory. I have my one coffee of the day as a very pregnant person. Today, we're working on a cold brew. And this is a special edition of Meet Up with Mallory. We have been getting some questions in our office about what happens when I go on maternity leave. For those who are not aware or who are joining us for the first time, first of all, welcome. I am due to deliver a baby girl, our first, anytime within the next few weeks. So we're kind of in the safe window now. So everything is going well. All the appointments have been good, and we're working towards transition and getting a bag packed and all the things we need to do to be ready in case it's go time. But we wanted to put this together to talk through that, answer any questions that you may have about what that process looks like. There aren't that many younger women or young moms that serve in the legislature, and what that means for you as a constituent. So this is a special edition of that, where you'll actually be able to meet our entire team, our staff, learn a little bit about how our office works. And then at the end, we will have Q&A. So again, if you're new, or just a reminder of how Meet Up with Mallory works, you can join us from Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. So everybody tuning in across all of those platforms, welcome. We're really, really glad to have you. And then you can type any questions that you have in the comments, and it will pull through to us where we'll be able to read them, and we'll do Q&A at the end. But before we get started with that, I did want to address a couple of things up front, since this is our virtual coffee hour, to connect with you. And, I would be remiss if we didn't start off with the events that we saw this week in the US Capitol. I really have a hard time putting words to it. And I think that just watching what played out at our nation's capital was surreal at best and horrifying at worst. There will be months to analyze how it was so easy to get into the Capitol. Congresswoman Slotkin talked this morning about the fact that there will certainly be investigations and briefings and trying to understand how it was so easy for so many people to get into the Capitol and on the Senate floor and onto the House floor, into members' offices. But it really, really hard to watch the culmination of the divisiveness of our country. And the people who perpetrated this act, I mean, the reality is they don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. These are anti-government extremists. And, repeating again what Congresswoman Slotkin said, somebody who served alongside the military overseas with foreign enemies and facing foreign enemy combatants. What is horrifying about this is these are not foreign enemies. It is our neighbors and people we live near that were encouraged by this president to overthrow the United States government. And that is something we have to grapple with. We have to call it what it is. And it's not acceptable. We need Republicans and Democrats to work together. We need to work for the good of our country and our state. And at this point, my view on this is the two sides have changed. It is, you are either for the United States and for a government that functions and debates and works for the people, or you're not. And it is shocking. I talk to my husband all the time and then sort of joke, but it's true. It's hard living in history. And this is going to be a very, very dark moment in our country's history. When we saw the Confederate flag flying in the United States Capitol for the first time since the 1800s. One of the most heartbreaking moments for me was when I saw some of the rioters on scaffolding outside of the US Capitol taking down the American flag and putting up a Trump flag. And that is not what our country stands for. And it was jarring to me because there was a moment in 2016, long before I was in this office, where I remember distinctly a moment like that in my neighborhood, where it was 2 days after the Access Hollywood tapes had come out of Donald Trump bragging about sexual assault on women. that somebody in my neighborhood similarly took down their American flag and put up a Trump flag. And I remember that just shaking me and realizing this is something else. And we saw this play out in Michigan. So my concern right now is what we saw in Michigan in April when we had demonstrations at our state capitol, when we had heavily armed uh, people come into our Capitol chamber, sit in our Senate gallery above my head. We were on the floor. That picture has since gone viral. That was not the end of it. It was the start here in Michigan. So that happened in April. And then over the next few months, a group of men used those events at our state capitol to recruit additional members who planned to kidnap and potentially kill the governor, along with storming our state capitol, taking hostages, and potentially carrying out mass executions. So, I think that there's a lot out there right now on Twitter and memes and things about how, the insurrection in the United States Capitol was dumb, right? The fact that people were wearing costumes, the fact that people were posting Snapchats, and there was just a report that somebody wiped feces on the Capitol floor, which is disgusting, but kind of laughing at it. But I don't want us to turn a blind eye and say this wasn't well organized or it was stupid or it failed. Because what we saw here in Michigan is that first event was the catalyst for a group of extremists to recruit each other, find each other, get organized. And, it would be horrifying to see what had happened had the FBI and the Attorney General not stepped in and broken that up here in Michigan. So we know that extremism is out there and that there are people who will use this event to recruit and organize and continue to push back on this. And we can't accept any more of people winking and nodding to QAnon, to conspiracy theories, to people who, again, don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They just want to cause chaos and overthrow the government and cause violence. It's not okay. We all have to stand up and say that is unacceptable. And everybody who was a part of this in any way needs to be held accountable. So more to come on that, I'm sure. But I just wanted to say, as somebody who is a part of the government, but also somebody who is a proud citizen of the United States. I'm going to do something kind of silly here right now, but I'm wearing United States socks. Like I love this country. We all love this country, and we have to find a way to work together and operate from a place of reality and facts. And that is my hope going forward. And I will have no patience for anybody who is cozying up to extremists who want to overthrow our country. And it was really, really hard to see it coming from the president of the United States. It just is. So moving on from that, I'm sure we will have much more, but I also want to touch on the vaccine before we get into our scheduled programming. Vaccine rollout began a few weeks ago, and I will be the first to say that we very, very much need to improve our vaccine distribution and communication, and that needs to start at every level, right? I think that we can point fingers and place blame all we want, but right now here is the update. So the state of Michigan, my understanding is every single dose that the state of Michigan receives is either out to a hospital, a county health department, a CVS, a Walgreens, a extended care facility. So the state isn't holding any vaccines. They have distributed them all throughout the state. But that being said, I know that it's frustrating to figure out, okay, who has what and where do I go and how do I get in line? The state announced just this past week, a couple of days ago, I believe, that the people who are eligible to receive the vaccine now has been expanded to residents 65 and older, teachers, a few additional frontline workers. We can share the details. But here in Oakland County, the issue is that while the eligibility has been expanded, the availability is limited. So right now, Oakland County's health department is currently not booking any new appointments until they can ensure they have enough supply. Beaumont announced yesterday that they would start administering 3,200 doses of the vaccine per day. But I know that their system has also been overwhelmed with people trying to book appointments. So they are now planning to send letters proactively out to any of their patients 65 and older when it is time for you to be able to book an appointment. And I just saw an update from Michigan Medicine, the University of Michigan's health system, that they are now distributing vaccines to residents 65 and older, but they said that it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 3 months for them to be able to vaccinate all of their patients who fall within that window, everybody 65 and above. So I know that that is frustrating, and people want to know, where am I in line? How can I sign up? How am I going to find out when I'm going to be able to get a vaccine? And we will keep sharing updates as we have them. But I do just want to level set expectations. Even Dr. Fauci has said now that we can reasonably expect, if everything goes well, that vaccines will be widely available by late spring or summer. So I know how hard this year has been, this past year has been, 2020 has been, and that everybody wants to get back to normal and everybody wants to get a vaccine as quickly as possible. But we still have to be patient. I will keep pushing to improve our distribution and logistics as much as we can here in the county and in the state. And it's going to take time. So in the meantime, you have heard me be a broken record on this. Mask up, social distance, wash your hands. If you can work remotely, do work remotely, limit your trips. We all know how to do this now. We are all experts in preventing COVID-19. And it's a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So more on that. But for all of our local residents, for the latest information, we want to make sure that you are going to Oakland County's website, because they have committed to updating their information on a daily basis. So make sure you're following Oakland County Public Health on Facebook and visiting the Oakland County government website, where they will be updating information. And hopefully, my hope is pulling in some of the other places that are outside of the county health department where vaccines are available. But that's where you, as a resident of our district, are going to be able to get the most accurate information for you. All right, now into the topic of the day. Yes, I am going out on maternity leave. I'm very excited to have a baby girl. No, she does not have a name yet. I know that's a question that we get a lot. And one of my favorite things was that I posted on Instagram that we hadn't picked a name for her yet. And there had to have been more than a dozen people who responded to me and said that we should name her after you. And I love that. I love the gumption. That is the confidence we all need to carry with us into 2021. So thank you for everybody who sent that response. We're working on a few. My husband and I are really excited. But yeah, so what does that mean for you? Some people reached out and asked us questions. They asked, does somebody take your place while you're out? Can you vote remotely? What happens to bills? So we wanted to put this together just to kind of let you know how it works. So I am planning on taking some time. It is an hour and a half for me to drive to Lansing, to the Capitol, 3 days a week to get to work. But we all know how important it is, not only for women to recover from childbirth, but also for bonding. You know, there is tons and tons of research out there that shows that those first few weeks of connection are critical to the development of a baby, to a mother recovering. So the state's official policy is that there is 12 weeks of maternity leave. However, legislators are technically not state employees. I mean, I get paid through the state, but the legislature regulates itself effectively. So those of us who are senators or House members, we don't technically fall under the same policy as state employees. So it's this very strange thing where I technically don't have a set amount of maternity leave. If I miss a vote in Lansing, it just goes on my record that I missed a vote. We do not have the ability to vote remotely, not only for people on maternity leave, but for any reason whatsoever. And you have certainly heard me talk about this as it relates to the pandemic. And I think given the events that we saw in Washington, D.C. this week, my hope is that there is a renewed call for contingency plans, because you all depend on your government, the people who represent you, to continue their work, and it can't be ground to a halt for a number of reasons. But we wanted to talk about what does it mean for particularly this instance? So beginning in March 2020, in at least 28 states and the District of Columbia, Guam, and the Virgin Islands, they adopted and enacted measures to allow for remote participation of voting or proxy voting for members on the floor in sessions or committee. And I actually have friends, colleagues in legislatures in other states around the country who posted pictures of their swearing in this week, sitting at their desk at home, just like this, where they all zoomed in and they raised their hand. So it's possible. It is possible. It is doable. We have seen states throughout the country allow for remote participation to make sure that even if you can't get to the Capitol, that work can continue. There has been movement in Lansing to allow for members who are serving active duty military to be able to participate remotely if you get called to duty. I don't know, and we can check in on that if anybody's interested. If that ended up passing, I know it's a bill that has come up a number of times because we do want to encourage, military service members, and we have a couple of members in the Senate right now, including Adam Ollier, who's one of my colleagues out of Detroit, who are in the reserves, who are, could be called up and do occasionally go and are on leave for trainings and for a variety of reasons. We should be able to allow for remote participation for people. But what that means in this instance is if I miss a vote, I miss a vote. It goes on my record. But just wanted to give you a little bit of background. So in case you do see any political attack ads against me in the next couple of years for missing a vote, that is the practical reality that I, as a legislator, have to weigh. So if there is a very, very important vote, if we're voting on a budget, if we're voting on COVID-19 relief, something that I think is critical, I will do my best, given wherever I'm at in recovery from childbirth, to get out to Lansing, to physically get out there and vote and make sure that I'm on your behalf. But a little bit of kind of how the sausage is made. So for, I would say 99.5% of bills that come up, that go up on the board in the Senate, they have already been negotiated, they have already been discussed, and the leadership of both the majority and the minority tend to not want to put votes up on the board until they know they have the votes. So if you go through all of the votes that we passed in 2020, for example, most of them passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. Many were unanimous, many were very close to unanimous, or there are bills that go up that fall very cleanly on party lines. There are some that do have some crossover, but there are very rarely surprises. And there's very rarely an instance where a bill would come down where the deciding vote would be me as a singular member. And if it was, I would very likely know about that in advance. We get together as a caucus. In the Democratic caucus, we discuss the agenda that's up for the week. We know what bills are coming up for a vote. Bills have already gone through the committee process. We know who's in support, who's opposed to them. We know what the vote in that committee was. So those of us who serve on committees, for example, I'm on Economic Development and Small Business. I'm the Democratic vice chair of that committee. We present out to the rest of our colleagues a discussion of each bill and how we voted, why we voted, the background. So we rely very, very heavily on our other colleagues for the background on the bill. But I just wanted you to know, as our constituents, that your voice is certainly still being heard, that if there ever is a vote that comes down to me as the deciding factor, that I will do everything possible to get to Lansing. But I also still think it's incredibly important, and I will be very vocal about what this experience is like as a new mom in the legislature, because I also think it's important that we pave the way for many different types of people to get into elected office. I think that our politics is going to function much better when the people who represent us are reflective of the people who are represented. And for many of you who are moms, who have been at home for most of the past year, who are juggling, trying to work and teach your kids and run your households, I don't know how you do it. I'm going to find out. It's going to be a crash course on top of everything else that we've been doing. My husband and I have both been working from home throughout the past year. But I want to be your voice in Lansing as well, and bring those experiences so that we can push forward legislation that supports women and families and encourages more people to have families and be able to do both and be valuable parts of our state and contribute to our economy. So, but with that being said, I think a lot of people also don't know how our office functions. So it's really interesting to get in and learn from the inside how it works. Because even before I got into the legislature and ran for office, I couldn't tell you how many people worked in the legislative office or who did what or how you would reach out to them. So, how our office works: we represent about 280,000 people in 8 cities in Oakland County. And we have a team of 6, including myself. So, I think some people think that I read every single email and answer every single phone call and personally write all of the bills myself. And that would be impossible. This is a team effort. And part of the reason that you vote for somebody for office is not only for the platform that they stand on, but I think that it's also voting for somebody who you think is going to be a good manager, because that's part of it. I am responsible for hiring and managing a team who works for you. So you're going to meet all of those people today and learn what they do. So what this effectively means for you, even while I'm out on maternity leave, is nothing changes. We will still have bills that we have been working on, that we've been working on for the past 2 years, that will get introduced. If you have an issue with state departments or your unemployment, or you need to find out more information about the vaccines, everything that's going to come up over the next few months, we are going to find out from you what's happening, and you will get updates from our office, and we will go from there. So I'm going to pull up Molly to introduce you to her first. So Molly Korn is my chief of staff. She was my first hire. Hey, Molly.
Hi.
Yeah, so Molly Korn, this was my chief of staff. She was my very first hire when I came into office, and she has served in Lansing for what, almost a decade now?
Yeah, 8 years.
Years. So one of the most important things for me, I was somebody new. For those of you who followed our campaign, I am not a politico by background. I came from a different industry. I ran for office for the first time. And it was really important to me to bring on a chief of staff who knows Lansing, who knows how the process works, who knows how to introduce bills, and could balance me out. I think there is value in bringing a new voice to the legislature, but I wanted to bring in experience as well. So, Molly, do you want to talk about a little bit of your background and what you do in our office? What do you do here?
Sure. So just a quick background. Previous to working with Mallory, I was in House Democratic Leaders, Minority Leaders Office, Sam Singh. He was out of East Lansing, and then I moved over to the Senate. So basically, most of my job includes obviously overseeing the day-to-day of our full staff, and then doing the bulk of the policy work. So working with our legal division to draft bills, brainstorm them with the senator or with stakeholder groups, and then kind of coordinating and collaborating with all of those groups, making sure everybody's at the table on particular issues, bringing in local voices if needed. And, you know, that can take some time. So I think that is also something that I learned when I came into the legislature that I didn't really realize. You'll see that out of our office, we'll be introducing bills that we introduced last cycle, and those are kind of easy ones to reintroduce. But new bills take sometimes like many months to go back and forth with stakeholders on kind of perfecting language. And so, that is something that even on maternity leave, Mallory and I can still be having those conversations while drafting legislation and things like that. So those functions can still happen. And additionally, I am, virtually now joining Mallory for session and committee, but pre-COVID, we were kind of joined at the hip in Lansing because wherever she was, I was. So.
And so, Molly, I think one thing that's really cool that people may not realize is everybody can watch session in committee, right? So even though you're virtual, you have still been watching all of the sessions in committees. And for any of our constituents, they can watch too, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's all public, and actually it's all archived too. So if there's, a particular committee for whatever reason that you're really interested in watching, you can actually go on the legislature's website and find, the archived video of that and pull it up. So
yeah, it's been really fascinating. So one of the tips that I got before I came into the legislature when we were thinking about committee assignments. So the leader of each caucus assigns members to committees. But, we put in for the committees that we wanted to work on. And the advice that I got was pick something where you're an expert and pick at least one thing that you don't know anything about, but you want to learn about. So our committees are economic development and small business. I was a small business owner. It's something that I'm really passionate about and have worked all over the country before coming to Michigan. So that was important for me. Energy and technology is another one of our committees where anybody who's been following us knows that I'm really passionate about electric vehicles and clean energy and new tech. But we're also on insurance and banking. And that is one that I will be perfectly upfront. I was not an insurance expert before coming into the legislature, but man, Molly, what has it been like being on insurance and banking?
So all three of those committees were very new to me, actually, coming into the legislature. That was definitely not my area of expertise when I worked in the House. So I've been learning a lot. Obviously, with insurance and banking, the first thing that we worked on was auto no fault. And the day I found out that we had that committee, I remember texting Mallory and being like, I'm not ready for this, just because I knew what that was going to be. But, it's been a really great learning experience. These are issues that I do think are some of the most impactful in the state. So it's exciting to be a part of it. And as minority vice chair on economic and small business development, again, part of my role and what will continue, functioning even while Mallory's on maternity leave is working really closely with the chief of staff in our chair's office. We have a really good relationship. Getting information to our members on that committee, making sure everybody knows what bills are up, if you've got questions, if we can answer them before committee or, if we need to answer them during committee. And if Mallory has any questions in any of her committees, again, we've got really good relationships with our Democratic colleagues, and I can pass any questions that we have on any particular bill to them to ask. So again, all of that functions normally, except for, being able to be there physically.
Yeah, and I think it's a good kind of segue, and then we'll move on. I'll let you go, Molly. But just really quickly, because I think this is an important thing for people to realize too. Can you talk us a little bit through the process of how a bill is written? It's not us sitting in the office writing a bill personally.
Yes.
So who does that? How does that process work?
Yeah, that was actually, again, I came into the legislature when I was 23, and I remember kind of sitting down into my desk the first time and being like, oh, I am not a lawyer. How am I supposed to write a bill? And then we kind of found out that we have a division in the legislature called the Legislative Services Bureau, and that is made up of lawyers and attorneys who specialize in different areas of Michigan law and Michigan statute. And you kind of work with them on bill ideas that you have. So you kind of bring them a rough idea of what you've been working on, any background that you might have been able to gather. Sometimes I just send them, New York Times articles about pieces of legislation that we've seen in other parts of the state, or other parts of the country that we would like to see implemented in Michigan. And we kind of go back and forth with those attorneys in that division until we kind of perfect the language that we think will work the best in Michigan. And then they do the drafting. And then from there, I order what, and this is kind of inside baseball stuff, but we order what is called a blue back, which is like the physical bill. Mallory signs it, gets turned in and introduced.
Yeah, and it's I just want to give a huge shout out to, there are so many people who work in state government who are lifelong public servants, who work in the Legislative Services Bureau, who work in our policy staff. So people who have been there far beyond any of the members' term limits, who are experts, who we rely on every single day. The Legislative Services Bureau, they are nonpartisan, so they don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or what bill idea you're coming to them with. They take their responsibility very seriously, and no matter what the request is, they will draft it. And they will draft it to ensure that it holds up in statute, that it would hold up against any challenges, that it fits neatly in statute. They know what area of Michigan law to put that bill in if it's going to revise an area of statute. And there are so many people who work so hard every day behind the scenes to make this happen that we couldn't do it without them. And then I just want to highlight what Molly pointed out, that I know it feels like the two parties go at each other all the time, but behind the scenes, particularly on the staff level, we all have very, very good relationships between our offices. Between a Republican chair and myself as the Democratic chair, we may have very public disagreements and heated debates on the floor about particular issues. But it's really important to us that our staff have a good relationship, that we know what's coming up, that there are not surprises. We're not trying to get each other. We're trying to come up with the best solution for all of you and for the state. So thanks, Molly, and we will let you go and move on to the next member of our team, who is Lisa. Lisa, hello.
Hi, Mallory. Hi, everybody.
So Lisa is our office manager, scheduler, coordinator, and the story of how Lisa and I came together is fantastic. So I wanted to share that. Even before I was in office, we were doing events, and there was an event in Detroit. It was the Women's March conference. So after the first Women's March, a year later, there was a conference at what is now the TCF Center in Detroit, and people from all over the country came to listen to panel discussions and speeches. And I hosted a panel discussion about women in the workplace. And Lisa was in the audience that day. We had never met before. I think posted on Facebook about seeing the panel. And then we just kind of stayed in touch, and we had a job opening, and Lisa is a retired teacher. So clearly failing at retirement because she's here in our office, but reached out and said, this is a totally new career for me. I've spent, my career in teaching, but want to work together. And here she is. So
Yeah.
You never know who you're going to meet. So Lisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do for our constituents?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for most of my teaching career, I taught government. So this has been like a civics teacher's dream. And I have learned so much on the other side of, not the aisle, but the other side of teaching theory versus being involved in this side of it. It's been amazing and satisfying and more than what I thought it was going to be. But my specific role as scheduler office coordinator is to really keep my fingertips on Senator McMorrow's schedule. So people call and we need to arrange meetings, and she speaks at events, and we have all sorts of things going on in her calendar, and I make sure that we don't double book. I make sure that she has the details for every event that she's in. And in addition, kind of manage the whole team schedule because there's multiple things going on at any given moment. So that's my primary role, is to stay on top of her calendar and make sure she knows where she's going, what she's doing at any given time, because it's really hectic. In addition, I am kind of been the first point person on the phone calls. So if you've called the office, more often than not, you've gotten my voice, and hopefully I've been able to help direct you to resources or another team member who can help get you the answers or to the resources that you need. And I'm excited that I get to share that duty pretty soon because we've added staff to the team, and I'll get some help on that, which will be great. But it's been a rewarding part of this job, and I'm loving it. So
yeah, and whenever we do get back to some semblance of normal, and if you do come to Lansing, we encourage you when it is safe to come back to Lansing when we're on the other side of, you know, kind of the chaos that's happening in the country and the pandemic and all of that. Come visit. Going on a Capitol tour is wonderful. If you've never been and seen the Capitol, it's a beautiful building. The Capitol tour guides offer an amazing history lesson of everything that has happened in and around our Capitol. But then if you come visit our office, Lisa is the first person you'll see. She'll be at the front desk to greet you. And it is, for anybody who's a constituent, it is your office, you know, to come out and see us. But in the meantime, we have been operating completely virtually since March to keep not only our team safe, but you safe. So we have done that with pretty much no interruption. I would say we've been more active. We learned how to use this platform. We've been really creative in finding new ways to reach people. So we are still available. And Lisa, you're still going to be managing schedules. It might be putting Molly in on a meeting instead of me while I'm out, but effectively nothing's going to change, right? If you're a constituent calling the office, we're still there to help you.
We're still there. Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Right, we're going to move on to Liz. So Liz, hello, Liz, whose hair looks fantastic today. I know that is not the most important thing, but it just does. Liz is our Director of Constituent Services, which is kind of a lot of the side of the senator's office that I think a lot of people don't even realize we have. So other states have part-time legislatures. Michigan's is a full-time legislature. And I know that that has been debated over the years on whether or not Michigan should have a full-time legislature and why do we have a full-time legislature. But part of what being full-time enables us to do is offer constituent services around the year to make sure that if you are having an issue with paying your taxes, if you are having an issue getting a permit through the city, if you've hit a roadblock, we can help with that. I mean, there are so many reasons why you would call your state senator's office. And if it is something that we can help with, we will. That is what has taken up most of our year of 2020 has been helping people navigate the pandemic, getting through to unemployment, making sure that you can troubleshoot issues, things that we didn't necessarily plan on, but that's been a bulk of our job. So Liz, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role?
Yeah, so I am Senator McMorrow's Director of Constituent Outreach and District Services. So in most legislative offices, there's kind of just two roles that we play. It's, you know, implementing and introducing policy, and then the constituent services side. So what that means for me is I oversee, you know, all correspondence with constituents, whether that be via phone, email, or in our e-newsletters that I draft, but also putting together pre-COVID town halls, coffee hours, office hours to make sure that we're available and able to connect and with constituents, you know, on any issue that they want to bring before us. So such as these virtual coffee hours now, like I help to implement. So in addition to our correspondence, I also help with casework. So that is if someone is having trouble with their unemployment or their MyBridge card, I help connect those individuals with the state departments that correspond with those. So right now it's a lot of unemployment. So I've been working a lot on that and trying to give updates on, you know, COVID-19 resources and any information that we do have. Yeah, and it's just also my job to make sure that Senator McMorrow is tuned in and updated on, you know, what our constituents are contacting us about and many of their concerns.
Yeah, and I think that is hugely important for people to realize, even if I'm out of commission for a few weeks, becoming a new mom, that we still have this entire team connected to you. There will still be, and this is a plug to sign up for our email newsletter. If you haven't already, you can find that at our website, senatormcmorrow.com. scroll down to the bottom, sign up for the email newsletter, which will keep you updated on what is happening in the legislature, what bills are moving, updates on COVID-19 response, all of those sorts of things that are put together and are available on our website as well. So stay plugged into that. And continuing, virtual events and town halls and updates. So you as constituents shouldn't miss a beat. It should feel like absolutely nothing has changed. And I think this is just a good time to say that if you do have an issue, I think one of the things that we learned over this past year is there are so many people who found themselves really struggling through this pandemic, maybe for the first time, people who maybe were unemployed for the first time in their lives in our district, who are just trying to figure out, where do I even start? How do I fill out this paperwork? Where do I go? What resources are out there? And that is what our team is here for, is to be that connector for you. We are your advocate in Lansing. And if you have a specific issue that is a legislative issue, Liz, that's something that they can kind of reach out and talk to us as well, where, I think a good example of this that I always bring up is licensed professional counselors. This was something that came up last year. We have a lot of counselors in our district who provide critical mental health services to patients, to students. And there was an issue where the scope of practice for counselors was set to expire through Lara and potentially not include certain services that counselors already provide. And we heard from many of our constituents that that was going to not only decimate their business, but cut off critical healthcare, mental health care access to some of our most needy residents. And that's something that, whether it's you directly needing help or, hey, we've got this issue that's happening in the district, that's something that they can reach out to our office as well about, right, Liz?
Yeah, and a lot of that is when we get an influx of emails like that, it's my role to help both Molly and Senator McMorrow understand why people are reaching out to us about this and relaying the concerns that they are sharing with us.
Yeah, so this is a good question that I think a lot of people have. What happens to all of the emails that come into our office?
I read them all. I read them all, and I kind of decide what to do with them. If someone's emailing us about unemployment assistance, I then, direct that into our system of how to get them help and assistance. If they're emailing us about a policy question, I can put it into folders and make sure that I'm tallying those and relaying them both to Molly and Senator McMorrow, and as well as responding to those emails with either resources or stances or information on that bill, and seeing where it is throughout the legislative process.
Perfect. So this is a perfect time to say, because people are always wondering what the best way to contact an office is. A lot of people tag me on Twitter or Instagram or my personal accounts. That's not a great way to reach me. And I don't say that to be off-putting. I say it because I miss a lot of things. If you're reaching out to my personal account and we're not friends, right, on social media, I may never even see it. And that's happened a few times where I've gone into a junk mail folder on my personal Facebook account and seen somebody who tried to reach out months ago about an issue. And that's heartbreaking for me. So this is a good reminder. If you're looking to get in touch with us, the best way is direct email or phone. Or go to our website and we have a form to fill out there. I think social media is a great way for us to communicate messages outward, and it's a great way for forums like this for you to ask questions. But the best way to reach us and make sure you're hitting our staff and able to get a response in a timely fashion is email. You can physically mail us a letter if you want to. Some people really prefer physical mail. You can call us, or you can go to our website. And I think that that's going to be the best way to make sure that it doesn't get lost. I don't want to lose things personally. We have this whole amazing team. Make sure you're utilizing that.
Yeah, and with us working remotely, we still have Lisa who goes into our office once a week to go through those physical letters that we get, and it gets to the right person. So we still see those too, even though if we're working mostly remotely.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Liz. We're going to move on. I know we're running sort of out of time. I talk a lot. I apologize. But we're going to introduce two of the newest members of our team who are both named Debbie. So this wasn't intentional, but they do different things. So we're going to start with Deb, we're working out how to differentiate. So if you want to come up with a cool nickname, like I am all on board with cool nicknames. But Deb is brand new to our team. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do? Because this is a new role that we've created as well.
Yeah, so I am the digital associate, the digital communications associate for Senator McMorrow. And my job is basically to run the social media for the office, as well as tracking different metrics to make sure that we're engaging with all of you in the best ways possible. We want to make sure that we have these accounts for a reason, right? And that's to disseminate information in really thoughtful ways. And we want to be as effective as we can with that. In addition to that, I also will be taking over on helping to administrate these coffee hours when Senator McMorrow goes out on maternity leave. And I also am helping out with the e-newsletter. But I just started a couple weeks ago. I'm really enjoying learning the ropes. So
yeah, it's really exciting. I think one of the things, this is actually pretty unique to the legislature. I think we are the only office that carved this out specifically as a role. And we did that after, especially going through this past year, realizing we knew beforehand, right? But how many people are coming to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever to get their information, especially when we can't see each other in person, when we can't have coffee hours and town halls. We don't want to ever put you as constituents in a situation that's unsafe. So, it's been something where, unlike congressional offices or kind of higher offices, if you've seen posts on Facebook, traditionally they've been me writing them. But to make sure, not only as we go into maternity leave, but as we get into the second half of our term, that I've got an adequate amount of time to be able to shift and make sure we're building relationships and getting what we need to do to pass policy, but that we're not letting go of these platforms because it's such a critical way to connect to you as constituents. So we wanted to bring in an expert, somebody who's going to find new ways for us to connect to people and hopefully reach more people. And do you want to give us, Deb, just like one thing that you did in your background before you came to our office that is exciting?
yeah, so one thing I did before starting here, for 11 months, I was a communications intern in the office of Governor Gretchen Whitmer from January of last year to December of this year. So we went through a lot over there, and I learned a lot on the fly during that internship, specifically with regard to social media and metrics. So I feel, really ready to jump into this. But yeah, it was crazy working for Governor Whitmer during all of this, I will say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a year for everybody. So I'm sure that, and it's funny. My husband worked for Governor Granholm many years ago, and he at 22, I think, became the director of IT under the governor's administration because he was really the only person who knew how the internet worked at the time. So we're really excited. I'm really excited to have Deb on board. So if you see content on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and elsewhere, we're going to be trying new things, and it's really exciting for me. So please follow our social media platforms. If you know of a friend or somebody else in the district or outside of the district who is maybe like scared of politics, send them a link, tell them to sign up. We're trying to make it accessible and available to more people. So thanks, Deb. We're really excited to have you on board.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, Debbie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
This may be a familiar face to many people in our district already. Debbie is a force of nature around Oakland County and hasn't been shy, and is also, not unlike Lisa, a failed retired teacher. And I say failed only because clearly you're here and you haven't retired. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and your new role here in our office?
Yeah, my background is in education and political organizing. And I am delighted to be also helping in constituent services. I am going to be working with Liz. There are a lot of people that contact the office by phone and email and need help. And I just started, but I'm really looking forward to hitting the ground running. I've been so impressed with the team. The McMorrow team is highly professional and committed and brilliant. And I'm really happy to be part of the team, and I'm looking forward to helping all the constituents in whatever way I can. So the more people that are in this role, the more people, the easier it'll be to get on top of all of your needs and your requests, and we're happy to do that.
And I'm really excited about this. One of the things that was a challenge when we came into office that a lot of people may not realize in the state Senate is my predecessor had a district director, somebody who was based in the district in Oakland County, who was able to connect with constituents on a full-time basis, which was, great. A lot of people reached out. They had good connections with him. They had a good relationship. When we came into office as the minority party gets half of the staff allotment as the majority party in the Senate. So our staff was cut in half from what my predecessor had, which was a real challenge in terms of how do we make sure that we're not negatively impacting your ability as a constituent to reach out to us, to get somebody who's there for you, who can work on cases. So it's been trial and error to make sure that we can staff up appropriately to make sure you have everything you need as a constituent. But the ability to have gone remote over the past few months has made us realize how much we can do remotely. So I'm really excited to have both Deb and Debbie, who are based in Southeast Michigan, who are local to us in and around the district. So rather than having our full team based in Lansing, this has allowed us to spread out a little bit. And that means that they are connected to you, to what's happening in Metro Detroit, to what's happening here in the area, who know this area, who know a lot of the people in the area. And that is a silver lining on a challenging past year, is that we're able to do this.
Yeah.
All right. So Debbie, I'm going to let you go, and then we're going to bring Liz back in for the past few minutes to do Q&A. So this is the call out. I don't think I see, we've done a lot of talking. Anybody who's left, if you do have any questions at this point, feel free to type them into the comments. Feel free to ask about maternity leave. Feel free to ask about the roles of our staff, how you can reach out to our office, whatever you want to do, type them into the comments on whatever platform you're on, and Liz will facilitate.
Yeah, we have a lot of people commenting that they're excited about the new baby. So mostly your family, but but we do have one question. Matt asked on Facebook. His question was from the beginning of the stream. What does this mean for the future of the GOP? I'm assuming meaning what happened on Wednesday.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And there was actually an interview that I did with WDET yesterday that aired during All Things Considered. Clip will be coming out later and we'll be happy to share it. But I think, especially as somebody who lives in Oakland County has long been a Republican stronghold, and we represent probably the most purple district in the entire state. It's almost 50-50 Republican and Democratic. But I know that a lot of people in our district who are lifelong Republicans look at what happened this week and look at what's happened over the past few years and say that's not them, and that they don't feel like they necessarily have a place in this party. So I can't say what the future for the Republican Party holds. I don't know if there ends up being a split in the future into multiple parties. But I will say it's incredibly concerning to me to see that people like Rep. Maddock and Michonne Maddock are being pushed up as the future of the party. They were both in DC this week, encouraging the riots and the insurrection. And that, to me, is really heartbreaking to watch, because I am somebody, and this may not be super popular with many of the people on our side of the aisle, I fundamentally believe we need a system where the parties can debate and work functionally together. Because most people, outside of those of us who are politicos and pay attention to this all the time, are somewhere in the middle, waffle back and forth, feel very strongly about certain issues on one side and very strongly on certain issues on the other side. And I think most people just fundamentally want it to work. And if we are going to get back to a place where we can compromise and debate, but debate based in reality, there has to be a change. So I don't know what that means yet, but it is definitely concerning to me that it seems like the loudest people on the more extreme end of the spectrum are the ones who have the most influence right now, because that is not where most people are. I know it's not a great answer, but we'll see. And I hope fundamentally that the party finds a way forward that isn't tied to extremist anti-government groups.
Yeah. The next question comes from Brian McMorrow, who you may know.
Hi, Dad.
What's the likelihood of getting legislation passed for remote attendance by senators and reps?
If I'm honest, very low. It is something where it should be really, really obvious. It should be obvious that we can do it. We actually passed laws in Michigan to allow local municipalities and school boards and other public bodies to meet remotely, and they have been since the start of the pandemic. I pop into local city council and city commission meetings just like this on video all the time. But there is, I would say, a cultural challenge in Lansing where there are certain people who feel that the institution can't change, that the way that we've always done it needs to be the way forward. And I think we see this in the private sector as well, where there's a stigma around remote work. Hopefully, a lot of that has changed throughout the pandemic, because you'll talk to people who say, oh, you're working from home. It must be so nice to work in your sweatpants or and watch TV all day, as if working from home isn't working. We know that's not true. Anybody who's ever worked from home knows it's actually harder to work from home and make sure you're organized and focused and you're not distracted by a contractor coming in, or if you've got a kid at home or your dog has to go out. It's a challenge. But work is work, and it's going to be a real challenge to, I think, change that mentality in Lansing. There is some reason, and we see this on the federal level too, the fact that Congress still has to meet in person, that unless everybody's physically there, there is this idea that it's not work, and we have to change that. There was a really good article in The Atlantic back in March, actually, about a commission in Congress that was established in the wake of 9/11 to come up with contingency plans that met for months, that put out reports. It was bipartisan, and that never moved forward in Congress. So, my hope is that we don't get so far away from these events where the urgency of the need to do this goes away. But that is, if I'm honest, my fear of what's going to happen. I hope that's not the case. I will continue to push for this. I've been advocating for remote meeting since April, since the beginning of the pandemic. And it is just, it's unacceptable to me that the private sector has figured it out and local municipalities have figured it out, and teachers and students all for the past year have been doing everything remotely. People rely on their government to function. And what we saw here in Michigan was one COVID outbreak shut down the House for an entire week. Shut it down. Nobody met. There were no committees. Just closed it. And that's unacceptable, because it means the work stops. And there are people who are depending on us to pass bills, to pass COVID relief. But I am sadly not optimistic at that moment that there is momentum. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to keep trying.
Yeah, all right. We're on our last minute of our coffee hour, and I'm not seeing any more questions. So they have any last minute questions, put them in, but
yeah, last call for questions. But Liz, I'm going to let you go, and I'll do sign off. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm really excited that you all got to meet our whole team. And looking forward to what's next. This is new for me. This is going to be new kind of territory. I'm really, really proud to work with colleagues like Stephanie Chang, who has 2 young kids as well, that I can learn from on how to balance being a mom and being a legislator. But we just wanted to say, we are here for you. We will always be here for you. We will continue to advocate for you. And I'm grateful every day to have what I think is the best damn team in Lansing. And we're looking forward to what's next. So I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we will see you for our next virtual coffee hour.